work a few problems for you, and you can see it. The circle formula is obvious. It's x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. Number one, really straightforward. It can't be much easier than that. You're going to plug in the information directly in. There could be equations like this where you have area. This is going to be 36 pi r squared. I've got to remember the area formula. It's pi r squared. Plug that in just so we can find r, right? So divide by pi, then take the square root, or realize that you just need r squared, and so we're going to go back and pick r squared up, which is 36. Okay, next part is we're going to be looking at a center and a point on the circle. Here again, this is a lot like before. I'm going to write the equation out, plugging in h and k, but this time I'm going to go back in, I'm going to pick up the other point, I'm going to plug it in for x and for y, and just simplify. We get 3 squared plus 1 squared, of course that's obviously 10 squared, or 10 equals r squared, and so I'm just going to plug in 10 right where I had r squared before, and that's going to give me my equation. Anytime you have a point, you could use the distance formula here, or just go right into the circle formula. In this example, we're going to be using the endpoints of a diameter, so I'm going to need to pick out the midpoint formula so I can find the center. Once I have the center, or the midpoint, I can use one of the original points to plug in for x and y to find out its actual radius. So here we're finding out the center is -4 and 5. I'm going to pick the first point, really because it had 0 in it. Otherwise, it doesn't really matter. So write it out. We're going to have x plus, or x minus -14 squared plus y minus 5 squared equals r squared. I picked the first point. I'm going to plug those in. I'm going to simplify a little bit, so we're going to get 3 squared plus -5 squared. Really, it's going to be just the 34 equals r squared. Take that 34, I'm going to go back up top, and we're going to go ahead and replace the r squared with 34. Number 5, this was probably one of the easiest ones. I can see the center pretty clearly. Be careful about the x and y axis, depending on which way you count. Make sure that you look to see if it's going up by ones or by halves, like in this case, or something else. And so this one's just about as easy as the first one. Plug it in, and you're done. Number 6, on the other hand, actually does completing the square. This is actually fairly complicated, but if you remember how to do it, it's pretty straightforward. It's just a little bit of work. Remember that it's b over 2 squared. That's my secret. That's what I'm going to be plugging in. And so when I work this out, I've got x squared plus 12x plus 36. So we've got 12 divided by 2. Lots of emails. 12 divided by 2, which is 6 squared, or 36, and then -14 squared, which is 96. Add that to the other side, and that way we're going to get our value. Remember, whatever you squared, like the previous part, that's what we're going to plug into our formula here. I'm going to do the same thing with y, except this time it's going to be -14. I'm going to do those into the equation, and this time I'm going to go ahead and plug in all of the, well, plug in, I'm going to simplify that to get 1. Now this is the hardest one. You have to have a graphing calculator, or a calculator at least that can do a 3x3 matrix. A lot of the calculators can. If you do not have one, if you can't find one, don't stress about it too much. It's mostly pretty easy once you get the part we're going to do by hand anyway. So we're going to pick out the equations. We're going to plug it into the general form, and you can see that general form right here on the equation. And so when I look at it, I'm going to actually work this out by plugging in the x's and the y's into the appropriate x and y, and I'm just going to simplify it. It's going to give you something with d, e, and f, and then you're going to equal to some whole number value. We're going to do this 3 separate times. We're going to make sure to keep the x's and the y's changed into whatever they need to be. We're going to simplify that by getting it all the way down to where you have the d, e, and f, and it equal to some constant value. This is going to be pretty consistent around the whole time, so we choose a third point. You should notice that when you plug this in, your x and y coordinates are going to be the coefficients of d, and e, and so that should be kind of a confirmation that you're doing it right. When you go to write the matrix equation, we're going to choose the 3 different equations that we ended up with, right? So I'll underline those for you there. The D coefficient is going to be the first column. The E coefficient is going to be the second column, and of course F, which is just 1, 1, 1, is the third one. We've got our variable matrix, and then it's equal to our constants, which is -80, -346, and -3d8. At this point, I'm going to grab my calculator. I'm going to plug in the first one to A, the last one into B, and we're going to do A inverse B to solve it. And once we get done, it gives us D, E, and F. And we'll keep our form in just general form for this problem, because it's a whole nother problem just to get it back into conic form or standard form. So here we go. There's our final solution by plugging D, E, and F back into what was original over there on the side. In the last example, this one's really simple too. I've asked you to graph the circle, which basically you need to take the R and the center, the radius and the center, plot those. I go up, down, left, and right, so I can make sure to kind of make it spaced out properly. It doesn't have to be a perfect circle. Mine is not perfect, but try to make it as best you can. On the number 9, you're actually going to go through and work out completing the square components here, and you're gonna get. I didn't do all the work, right? You can see the previous example for that, but it's just it's half of 6 and half of -8, so you're gonna plug it into it and work that out on the way out. You're gonna get -3,4 as your center, and R is 3. Here again, do the same thing again and draw through that. Now, and that's it.